who have been following us very closely, you know that we are at the concluding part of this program. And it's important to take note of the fact that the Microsoft's Learn Student Ambassadors Unilag Cybersecurity Bootcamp. Well, there are bootcamp also going on for other program or other pathway, but we are in the cybersecurity bootcamp. One of the facts we've always emphasized is to make people realize that you could actually decide to come into cybersecurity for two purposes or for two reasons, whichever one of them plays out for you. You could come into cybersecurity because you want to build a career pathway in cybersecurity, or you could decide to learn and get more exposures on cybersecurity because you want to upgrade yourself in your current career pathway. Like I made mention of when we started right out, that if there are two persons applying for a job and one person is applying for, let's give an example, as an accountant, you're applying for the role of an accountant, and one is just coming as a pure breed accountant, then the other person is coming as a pure breed accountant with cybersecurity training exposures and probably some certification. It's very glaring that the employer would prefer the guy that has the cybersecurity knowledge because that becomes a plus for the job role that he will be involved or she will be involved in. And also, it's very important for us to take note of the fact that cybersecurity is not just a business of cybersecurity professional. Cybersecurity is everybody's business. Hold on. Okay. Cybersecurity is everybody's business. It's not just the business of cybersecurity professional. I do take undergraduate students some courses on safety, and just the same thing we say about safety. That safety is everybody's business. It's not just the business of the safety officer or the safety professionals. So the same thing applied to cybersecurity. It is everybody's business, and that's one of the reasons why I think Aziz made a reference to this in the last class, which I also made a reference to, that it's important to take note of the fact that as cybersecurity professional, your role is very, very critical in the organization. And apart from having a very critical role to play, even when it comes to cybersecurity, we always use this phrase that the humans are the weakest link. And we are always making reference to a particular picture we shared on the page some time ago. And one of the things we talked about is, or we showed, was there were different technologies. Well, that's going to be one of the overviews we're going to look at today. There were different technologies in an organization to enhance the cybersecurity of the organization. There was firewall, there was incident detection technologies, there's incident prevention technologies, and let me just say this. And in case I don't come back to, just remind me, what's the difference between the incident response technology and the incident response or detection, prevention rather, incident detection technologies and incident prevention technologies. And you have all these technologies on, you have your antivirus, you have your anti-malwares, you have all the various form of technology you could use to protect your organization. But once the humans that are supposed to implement and to make this technology to work are not trained, we discover that just a click from somebody can mess up the whole system. And that's one of the reasons why organizations today, I know one of the most relevant and one of the training that most organizations try to do today, especially organizations that knows what they are doing anyway, they have to train their employee how to recognize phishing. It's called phishing awareness. They have to train their employees how to recognize phishing, because a bad link from an employer or from an employee would mark a whole lot of hazard and risk to the network and eventually critical infrastructures of the organization. So it's important to take note of that. Yeah. Then I would want to also emphasize that there's a particular phrase we always say in this training that your real training actually starts after the training. Yeah, your training, your learning starts after the training. Like I always say this, that for all the modules that we've handled from module 1 to module 8, it's very important to take note of the fact that each of these modules themselves are courses. They are courses on their own that you can go on and on and on for the next 1 month on them. So that's why we are doing a high level framework. That's what we've just presented to you. A very high level framework in which you need to sit back and the breakdown that is contained in the content of every module, you need to take it as a kind of curriculum for yourself for that particular class and expand, dig deeper. What will differentiate you from every other person is how much effort you put into your learning after interactions like this. So please, it's very important to take note of them. So let's quickly do a very fast review. In module 5, we looked at cybersecurity technologies and tools. Sorry, let me get my glasses. Okay. In module 5, we looked at cybersecurity technologies and tools. And one of the reasons we had to look into this is we made ourselves to realize that when it comes to cybersecurity, especially when you are gradually approaching the state and the stage in which you have to determine which particular area you want to sit on. Remember, like I said, when it comes to cybersecurity, there are different career pathways in cybersecurity, and there is nobody that knows all. Sometimes you think that, oh, this person, because is a good penetration tester, is a good pen tester, knows it all. But by the time the guy starts functioning in governance, risk, and compliance category and aspect and part of cyber, he may not know much really. He will just have his expertise in penetration testing. And there are some persons, they have their expertise in the governance, risk, and compliance aspect of cybersecurity and may not really be very good when it comes to hands-on for pen testing. So it's just important. However, I always give this advice that for the entry level and the entry stage, try to know as much as possible about every area for your entry stage. Try to know, because you would not even be able to recognize the pathway that you are cut out for if you don't know that such pathway even exists. So have some basic exposures in both the technical and the policy and administrative aspects of cybersecurity. Have basic exposures in it, so that even when you get to a stage where you decide to specialize, you discover that you still have some basic knowledge of other areas of cybersecurity. So it's just important to take note of that. Now, the cybersecurity technologies and tools is, that session is a basic session, is a high-level session for everybody to realize and recognize that there is actually a technology aspect of cybersecurity. And I know I was not in the class, but I am very aware what transpired to a very large extent in the class, because by the topic we're looking at technologies and tools that a cybersecurity professional should know about. Yeah, you may not be able to know everything, but you should know about them as much as possible, and you know that something like that exists. Now, there are technologies that I would make mention of, which I believe Aziz has already talked about that to us. And these are technologies and tools that you need to know. You may not be able to understand the technical know-how of how these technologies operate or how they are deployed, but you need to understand the framework, what the technology is meant to do, how does it operate, how does it function, how can it keep an organization safe. And it's important to know, let me just get straight into it so that we can quickly touch on a number of things, because I am also pressed with time. Okay, now we have firewalls. Firewalls are like gatekeepers of the organization. Firewalls determine what comes in and what goes out. Very important. That's a tool, it's a technology that keep the network and also the infrastructure secure. You know, the network is like the road that leads to your infrastructure. So it keeps it secure. So you can refer to firewalls as probably the gates, and there can be multiple firewalls. The same way in an environment, you can have multiple gates. There is a gate that leads to the streets. Then even in the street, there's another gate that leads to another street. Then after that, there is a gate that leads to your own compound. And after that, there is a door that leads to your house. So you see that there are multiple gates and doors that someone would have to go through before they come to your own location, your own privacy, where you have your own critical infrastructure. The same thing when it comes to enterprise, there should be gates. It means there should be firewalls. So firewalls are like gates that determines who comes in and who goes out. Now, the procedure of determining who or what comes in and who or what goes out is a function of what we call firewall policies. It's a function of what we call firewall policies. For me, I had a working experience with firewalls a lot, especially when I still did a lot of work with the cloud. I don't really do much of cloud project these days because of my other engagements. When I got involved in the cloud, you would have to write your firewall policies. Yeah, there are default firewalls policies in the cloud, but you as a cloud engineer, you would have to write your firewall policy because your firewall policy will determine the security posture of your organization when it comes to virtual network. The same thing as a cybersecurity professional, you need to realize that firewalls are things that they also, to a very large extent, keep the bad guys away. Even though the bad guys, sometimes they still have their way around firewalls. And when I say the bad guys, that's the malicious actors. They still have their way around the firewalls, but we just need to understand that firewalls is one of the tools and technology that we use in cybersecurity to keep the bad guys away. And sometimes, let me give an example. I don't know, probably, especially if you are in Nigeria and you are trying to access a particular web app or a particular web, and you receive a notification that this resource is not available for people from your location. What has just happened was there was a firewall policy that cuts you off from accessing that particular network. You want to access a network via online resources, but that particular organization decide that they don't want anybody from your part of the world to access it. So they put up a firewall policy that says block out any IP that is coming from West Africa or block out any IP that is coming from Nigeria. Please take note, your IP are geotagged. IP is your internet protocols. That's your IP address. Your IP address is as simple as the address of your system. Your phone has an IP address. Your laptop has an IP address. And that's why I told you that when you come online, you are not seen as who you are. You are seen by the virtue of your device. So your device has an IP address to be able to know that, okay, somebody from this part is trying to access these resources online. And take note, your IP address are geotagged. That is, they are location tagged. Their location attached to your IP address, so that they can know where a particular traffic is coming from. So it's important to take note. Then when we talk about firewalls, there are different types. We have the hardware. There are the hardware firewalls and there are the software firewalls. Then also, like I talked about, we have the cloud-based firewall. So it's important to take note. There are firewalls that are hardware. There are firewalls that are softwares. Then there are the ones we use in the cloud. So it's important to take note. Then remember, I talked about the intrusion detection systems or technologies and the intrusion prevention systems or technologies. Now, these also work like firewalls. They determine who comes in and who go out. Now, let's break it down. I talked about this earlier on. For the intrusion detection system would not stop a traffic or would not stop a malicious actor from gaining access into your organization. It will only detect it. And it will detect it by sounding off an alarm based on the parameters that you are put in motion. Let's assume you have a web app and you discover that you are always having challenges with any traffic permit me, I'm not having any sentiment towards any country, but I'm going to mention some countries. You discover that you're always having challenges when it comes to traffic coming from India. You discover that probably, let's say 50% of them are malicious traffic. Now, you could set up your intrusion detection system to alert you when there is a traffic coming from that part of the world, when there's a traffic coming from India. Now, that intrusion detection system will not stop that traffic, but it will alert you that there is a traffic into your device that is coming from India. And immediately you start putting all your necessary procedures in place to monitor the activities of that particular traffic, to monitor the activities. You start putting it in place. However, the intrusion prevention system will not only detect traffic you don't want to access your critical infrastructures or your online infrastructures, but it will also prevent them. Now, all these things work based on policies. You know, I talked about firewall policies. You have to set up the policies for your intrusion prevention system so as to ensure that it catches up with a particular traffic or a particular person or a particular malicious actor that is trying to access your critical infrastructures. You know, let me add this to it. Now, one of the ways we become more efficient with our cybersecurity job these days is to actually depend on AI, artificial intelligence. And that's why most of our tools in cybersecurity are AI driven. They are AI driven. So that at the end of the day, it's easy to monitor a particular IP address. Probably it has been noticed that that IP address causes malicious or carry out malicious activities on infrastructures, on online infrastructures. Now, once the IP address is coming in, because it is AI driven, your intrusion system, your intrusion prevention system is AI driven, it will pick it up immediately. Now, let me come up with something that we need to pay attention to. When it comes to IDS, you know, IDS is your intrusion detection system, or your IPS. IPS is intrusion detection system. When it comes to these two technologies, sometimes we do have false positive. Now, false positive is there is an alarm, but you just discover that the alarm is the reason behind the alarm, you don't have to really worry yourself, really. It's I'm trying to, in a very high level, explain what you mean by false positive. Yes, there was an alarm, but at the end of the day, it was not a bad actor. I think that's a better explanation. The traffic was not coming from a bad actor. It was just a false positive. And that's one of the reasons why it's also very important to have your cybersecurity personnel, no matter the technology, to man the technology. You can't just put up the technology and go to sleep. There should be somebody that mans the technology so that once there is a false positive, you can still allow the person to go on to do their work. So once the technology reaches false positive, you check and say, oh, no, this person is not a bad actor. He's actually a real person, and maybe he's even one of our staff, so that you can allow the person to go on. So it's important to take note, like I said, the IDS and the IPS work mostly to monitor traffic or suspicious activities and generate alerts. Then the IPS will prevent it from getting into the system. Then we have the antivirus and the anti-malware. That's another technology and tool that is used in cybersecurity. We have the antivirus and anti-malware. I believe every one of us will know what antivirus is, and we know what anti-malware is. An example, you have Kaspersky, you have Bitdefender, you have McAfee, you have Norton, you have different types of antivirus. It's important to take note. And I also believe the tutor also handled the encryption technologies. Okay. Now, for encryption technology, we already discussed that one of the purposes of encryption is to ensure confidentiality in cybersecurity, is to ensure that when I'm sending a message from point A to point B, nobody else sees the message. There is no, there is a cyber security, there's a cyber attack that is called MITM, that is man in the middle attack. MIT, MITM, man in the middle attack. There is no person that is trying to look into what I'm sending, because what I'm sending should be confidential. And that's why if you take note of, I don't know if I've ever taken note of your WhatsApp message. WhatsApp will tell you that all your conversation are encrypted hand to hand, which means that there is nobody that can intercept the message you are sending. For instance, if I'm chatting you up on WhatsApp, the only person that sees what our chat is myself and yourself. That's what they call hand to hand. There is nobody in the middle that can look at the message and see the message. The message is encrypted. Immediately I type it and I'm reading. When I type it and I send, I click on send on my phone, encryption takes place immediately. And once it arrives at your hand, you are able to read it because it becomes decrypted. So it's important to take note. Now, when we look at encryption, I hope this will not be beyond the level of this class, to just understand some basic level of encryption that takes place. Sorry, please. To just understand some basic level of encryption that takes place and some basic type of encryption. Now, when it comes to web communication, permit me, I'm going to make a reference to something again. Remember, I said something that as a cybersecurity professional, there are some basic knowledge you need. An example is networking. You need the basic knowledge of networking. Remember, I said you don't have to be a network engineer or professional, just have the basic knowledge. Now, when it comes to secure web communication, we have the TLS. Sorry, I have to take water. We have the TLS and we have the SSL. Now, the TLS is transport layer security. Then the SSL is secure socket layer. Now, these are things and these are technologies that enhances security of web communication. And transcription. Encryption takes place in this particular level. Then another encryption technology and tool is the advanced encryption standard. Is majorly used for data encryption. That is called AES. Let me just leave that. There are a lot of things coming up that I would have want to talk about, but because of our time. Let me just make mention of it briefly. I think I posted about it during the week. When it comes to encryption, there are lots of concern currently in the cybersecurity world, because I like to look at what is happening, what's the trend, what's the future, what are the preparations we need to make as a cybersecurity professional. Now, there are lots of concern when it comes to encryption, and the concern stems out of quantum computing. With quantum computing, any encryption that is not strong enough could easily be broken. And that's why currently we have what is called quantum attack. Now, for the quantum attack, it means the bad guys or the malicious actors are able to lay their hands on a quantum computer to be able to launch the attack. Although it's not a major threat at the moment, but is a threat that people are already looking into. And in some circle, they will call it, presently, it is still a theoretical threat. They've not probably seen it at work, but there's that possibility of that. And as a cybersecurity professional, we move ahead of time. We look at what's going to be happening in the next 2, 3, 4 years, and we start preparing ourselves for it. So that's why I had to mention it, that currently there is that concern about quantum computing and quantum computing being able to break down some encryption. And that's why IBM are coming up, not just IBM, even the NIST is coming up with standard encryption method that could stand the test of quantum computing. So it's very important, of quantum attack. So it's important. I just needed to mention that it's not in any way part of what we should look through, but it's just what we should know. So it's important we take note of that. And we talked about the multi-factor authentication, MFA. Some it could be two-factor authentication. But as long as it's more than one, it is multi-factor. Have the multi-factor authentication, and if apart from biometrics, apart from tools used for biometrics, if you have the opportunity to have a Google Authenticator on your phone, please do. It would help so that when you are faced some security risk, the other bad actors, the only time they could make away with anything is probably they have access to your phone while carrying out the attack virtually. But once they don't have access to your phone physically, it would improve your security posture. It's important to take note of that. Yeah. Then we have the EDR. I think if I can remember very well, as this was talking about the EDR, that is the endpoint detection and response. When we talk about endpoints is your laptop, your desktop. Those are endpoints. Those are devices. That is devices that you use, your laptop, your desktop, your phones, your server. And there are endpoints detection and response technologies that we use to monitor and collect activities from endpoints to be able to understand pathways of some cyber attack. So it's important to take note of that. Okay, well, let me mention it. I'm just being very careful so that I'm not introducing too many things. I take note of the fact that there's this technology called DLP. DLP is data loss prevention. Data loss prevention. I got exposure to this when I was doing a lot of work in the cloud. You must activate your DLP. In fact, for some cloud provider, it's almost automated, especially Google Cloud. I did a lot of work in Google Cloud. For Google Cloud, it's almost automated. Their DLP is automated once you are loading up your platform and setting up your critical infrastructure. So we have the DLP, that is the data loss prevention. And the way it functions is that it prevents data from being accessed or transmitted outside an organization. Once you're outside the organization, that data would not be transmitted. So the data is only meant for the organization. Then you should also know CM. CM is Security Information and Event Management. CM, Security Information and Event Management. And what CM does is CM collates and aggregates activities from multiple sources of logs, events in real time to detect and respond to threats. That's the benefit of CM. CM would take in multiple feed, logs, events, activities online to be able to help you discover a potential threat. That's very important. An example of CM is Splunk. We have the Splunk, we have the Alien Vault, we have the IBM Q Radar. It's important to pay attention to that. Well, I don't know how many of us we've heard about IAM. IAM, that's the Identity and Access Management technology. And most of us, we use it, but we don't know. And it's used under Microsoft Azure AD. We have the IBM Security, Identity, Governance. And this is just used to identify and give access to probably people that are supposed to get into your network. But anybody that can't get into your network, that is not meant to access anything in your network, they won't be able to have access. Yes, then we have the penetration testing tools. Penetration testing tools. I don't know if Aziz was able to take us through any practical class, but it's just important to take note of the fact that you need to understand that we have tools like Nessus, we have tools like Bob Suits, we have tools like Metasploit. These are pen testing tools, and it's important. I remember hearing Aziz saying this, that use responsibly, use with all sense of responsibility, so that you also don't become a malicious actor. Don't start looking into networks you don't have permission to. Before you look into a network, get a permission. Before you check out a network, get permission of the owners of the network. Otherwise, you have become a black hat. Even if you don't steal anything, as long as you are picking and you are looking into networks you don't have permission to look into, you have become a black hat, kind of, anyway. Okay, then we also do vulnerability scanning. Vulnerability is to detect weak points, entry points of a particular network. And part of the tools we use is Qualys. We use Nessus too for vulnerability scanning. So I would want to make mention of these. It's important to take note of this fact, even though we may not really dig deep, but probably you could decide to go and look deeper. We actually use blockchain when it comes to improving security posture of organizations. We use blockchain, and blockchain has to do with a kind of decentralized ledger technology to secure data transaction and also prevent malicious actors from tampering with a particular data. That is to ensure data integrity. In short, to ensure data integrity. And blockchain today has found its usefulness in almost every field, just like cybersecurity. And blockchain has a way of enhancing security posture of an organization. I am currently going through a postgraduate program in project management, and we had a session on blockchain, using blockchain for enhanced project management, especially talking about building management now. There are blockchains are being used. So as cybersecurity professional, we need to also understand that blockchain is one of the technologies that can be used to improve the security posture of an organization. And most of the time we hear about blockchain, the only thing that comes to the mind is what's it called? Cryptocurrency. Blockchain has applications beyond cryptocurrencies. It also has applications in cybersecurity. So you could really check that out. Yeah. Oh, man. Well, let me say this. The basic thing we are only doing is we are doing a high-level revision. Then we also talked about job roles and specialization in cybersecurity. But that's a very good way to approach it, is to look at the job roles as technical roles and non-technical roles. The technical roles require you to have technical knowledge, technical know-how, and the non-technical roles does not really require you to have technical knowledge or technical know-how. It's important to take note. And we looked at different various job roles in cybersecurity. We have the security analyst. Basically, what they do is to perform vulnerability assessments and to analyze the logs. The logs, and logs could mean a number of things. In a log, there are different components. There could be dates, there could be IP address, there could be time. You just analyze logs, then you also implement security improvements based on recommendation. Now, most of the time, you could work as a SOC analyst. SOC analyst is Security Operations Center. SOC analyst, Security Operations Center analyst. It's important. Or you could also work as a cybersecurity analyst. Then we have the security engineers. Those ones, they design and manage your tools. When we talk about engineers manage tools and technologies. So they design and manage your tools. So it means that by the time you are having somebody configuring your firewalls, setting up your encryption, be sure it's working well, to hardening your system to resist attack, that person is a security engineer. Then we'll talk about the pen tester. Yeah, that's regular, because once you tell anybody you're a cybersecurity professional, the next thing they think you're hacking. They think every cybersecurity professional must always hack. Okay. Now, what pen tester does is they just simulate a cyber attack to identify vulnerabilities, to know the weakness and the weak points and the entry points into the network of the organization. Apart from the technical level, we also have the non-technical aspects of cybersecurity, and they generally fall under the governance, risk, and compliance aspects. And apart from governance, risk, and compliance aspects, you could actually also work as a DPO, not divisional police officer, but a data protection officer. You actually work as a data protection officer. And what you do mostly as a data protection officer is you're going to be looking at data privacy policies. You're going to be looking at compliance with regulations. You are going to be looking at interacting with regulators, and once there's a breach, to know what to do as a data protection officer. So you could actually be a GDPR specialist. You could, I'm giving some people an idea now, you could be a GDPR specialist. If you are someone that you like to just read instead of working with tools, you could consider that and start having an understanding of the various structure of GDPR so that you can advise an organization accordingly. Very important. Then you also will have understanding of policies. It's important to take note of that. And also, there is the education aspect. I know a lot of people don't talk about this. There's the education aspect of cybersecurity. You could decide to be a cybersecurity trainer or instructor, just like I'm doing. You could decide to also explore that pathway. It's just many expertise based on the function or depend on your own particular interest. And after we looked at the job roles in cybersecurity, we also examined the cybersecurity policies and governance. And let me say this. When it comes to cybersecurity policies and governance, it's important, first of all, to have understanding of standards and framework. Standards and framework. And remember, we talked about standard. The NIST, the primary standard in cybersecurity is the NIST CSF, the NIST Cybersecurity Framework Standard. Then we also have standard applies to different fields. There's a standard for the financial industry, that is the PCI DSS. PCI DSS only apply to fintech or financial industry. Then we have the IPSA, that is the, okay, let me talk about this, the health insurance portability. I can't remember the full details now. That particular standard only applies to health, but it is also not general. Applies to health and applies to the United States. We don't have such standard for Nigerian Health Organization. Probably Nigerian Health Organization may come up with its own data, but as at now, we don't have that. IPA, we don't have that available in Nigeria. So it's a function of location, then a function of a particular industry. It's important to take note of that. Yeah. Then it's important to take notes when we talk about policies. We look at frameworks, we look at standards, and we look at a way of this being implemented in our organization. And for me, when I look at things like this, I try to look into what are the low-hanging fruits? What are the low-hanging fruits? And the low-hanging fruit means what are the things I can pick from this and start implementing? Remember, there is no way we can cover everything that has to do with cybersecurity policies. But it's important to take note that there are some low-hanging fruits, like how I get into this. Okay, let's say it. How do I go into putting up a cybersecurity policy for an organization? Let me say this. Cybersecurity policies are living documents. When I mean living document, they are evolving documents. They are documents that must always be updated. Cybersecurity policies are documents that must always be updated. And there are different types and aspects of a cybersecurity policy. Some might apply to some organizations, some might not apply to an organization. And what are the key, let me just go through that very fast. What are the key cybersecurity policies that we need to pay attention to? I know, I'm trying to remember, I think Motunrayo handled that, which is the acceptable use policy. You have the acceptable use policy, and this defines what is accepted and what is not accepted of an organization resources. That's computers, email. There are some organization, part of the acceptable use policy is you cannot use the organization's email to send non-official messages. Or organization's computer, you can't use it to access some particular site, and you can't download from some particular site. So it's very important to take note. There are different aspects of acceptable use policy. Maybe what I will do to help us learn one or two things, I'll get a sample of some cybersecurity policies and share with us on our page. Then apart from the acceptable use policies, we also have the access control policy. We have the access control policy, which determines who access what. And in access control policy, we have the role-based access control. That is to say, if you don't deal with, let me use this environment, if you don't deal with students, don't access student data. That's role-based. If your own role is to send birthday message, you only have access to birthdays of members of staff. You don't have access to their account details. You don't have access to their family details. You only have access to their birthdays. Okay? So it's important to take note of that. Then we have the incident response policy. There are different policies you can have. As organizations get bigger, the more critical the policies are. You know, for some organizations, they would have to have what is called a DRBC policy. The DRBC policy is disaster recovery and business continuity policy. And what they do is they have a policy of backup and recovery procedures to determine how is our backup done, how is our recovery procedure done. So it's very important to take note of that. Then every organization should have a password policy. Even web applications, they have password policies. Sorry. I don't know if you have found yourself in a situation where you want to, how do I put it now? Where you want to sign up for something and you are asked to put in your password. There are some web app or there are some website that will not allow you to use a weak password. Some websites would show you that your password is weak, but will not do anything about it. But there are some websites, they will not allow you to sign in if your password is weak. Those are password policies. They determine what type of password you use, what are the nature and what guides the characteristics nature of the password that you use. You know, look at minimum number of character, look at frequency for change of password. You know, the password policy we look at, okay, you can't use a character that's less than 12 words, or you can't use a password that's less than 12 character. You can't use a password that's less than 12 character. That's a password policy. The frequency of change of your frequency of change of password is also a policy. We talk about every password must be changed every three months. Password must be changed every three months. It's important to take note of that. Yeah, so there are different policies. That's what I said. When it comes to cybersecurity policy, is a function of the complexity of operations of the organization. So the more complex operations an organization run, the more standard and the more complex also is cybersecurity policies would be. Very important to take note of that. Yeah, still talking about policies and governance, is very important for us to take note of the fact that there are frameworks. You know, I cannot overemphasize this. There are framework, and under this framework, I already said that we have the NIST CSF as the standard framework from the National Institute of Standards and Technology. That's what we call the NIST. However, take note, framework are voluntary, but standards are compulsory. Frameworks are voluntary, standards are compulsory. It's important to take note of that. Yeah, there are a lot of things to talk about, but because of our time, and finally, we talked about implementing cybersecurity in an organization. Implementing cybersecurity in an organization. Now, this is meant to start driving you towards real life application of some of the things that you have learned. That's one of the reasons why we had this module. And you should be able to develop a cybersecurity strategy. Today is Saturday. Oh, hope I'll be available. On Tuesday next week, no, not Tuesday, on Thursday next week, we are going to discuss your project because you'll be doing a project. And part of the project you'll be involved in would have to do with cybersecurity strategies or setting up cybersecurity for an organization. Now, let's quickly run this down because I believe Aziz did a very good work. It's a very complex work, but it's a very good work that he did the last time he spoke with you. I would say this, that when it comes to implementing cybersecurity in an organization, your primary goal is actually to improve the security posture of the organization. And what you do and the process you go through is a function of, let me start with saying first, the complexity of operations in the organization, and number two, where is the organization starting from? What had been their cybersecurity endeavor? Now, if you find out that this organization or this enterprise have not intentionally carried out anything when it comes to their cybersecurity or their security posture, now it means you have to do a lot of assessment, and that's one of the things that Aziz made mention of. Both those who have been functional and those who are not functional, but more for those who are not functional at all. For those who have been functional, you can look at, okay, what is the assessment that has been done? What is the cybersecurity assessment that has been done for this organization? Then apart from the assessment, you now begin to look at, okay, what could have taken place before then? So you can do your own assessment compared to the previous assessment that has been done. But for a fresh organization, the assessment will be the first assessment. And that's why I said it's more critical for a first-time organization that is starting to take their security posture seriously. And it's important when you are developing cybersecurity strategy to ensure that it aligns with the organization business goal. Please, cybersecurity professionals, take note. We always fall into the temptation of security is important, and we don't pay attention to the business goals. You have to pay attention to the business goals. As important as security is, they also need to make money. If they are not making money, how do they even pay you as a security professional? So it's very important to align the cybersecurity strategy with the organization business goals. And you have to define scope, you have to define key objective, you have to look at risk tolerance, and look at critical assets, critical pathways. Now, what are critical assets or critical pathways in an organization? Those are things you need to first assess and identify. Those critical pathways and critical assets. Now, critical pathway or critical, okay, let me say critical pathway first. Critical pathways are processes within an organization that is essential for the organization to achieve its aim. Or critical assets, they are assets within an organization that is necessary for an organization to achieve its aim. Let me give an instance. For instance, a bank that is doing a lot of online banking. Part of their critical assets is their websites or their banking app. So the banking app is a critical asset. Why? Because if the banking app is down, the business goals of the organization is getting defeated. Why the organization is in business is no longer relevant. So that's why the banking app is a critical asset. Very important to take note. So you need to, in the process of developing a strategy, a security strategy, you need to be able to identify critical assets. Then I would encourage, if you have not done so, I would encourage, I think these are some of the things. Please, somebody, please take note of these things that I said I would send to you in the group. I think I made mention of something that I said I would send initially. Who can remind me? I think I'm talking about sending is it a sample of a cybersecurity policy? There's something I said I was going to send. Can anybody remember? Okay. Please, somebody just help me to take notes then. I hope I'm not talking to myself anyway. Somebody just help me to take note. This information I said I'm going to send. I'm going to send a sample of a cybersecurity policy, a very basic one of a cybersecurity policy. Then I'm also going to send you a sample of NIST CSF, that is the NIST cybersecurity framework. I'm going to send you the framework itself, rather, not just the sample, the framework itself on our group page. Then you need to also be able to conduct a risk assessment, then also take asset inventory. What are the asset inventory? And in taking your asset inventory, remember I talked about critical assets again. Critical assets is important and non-critical assets. And you pay more attention to protecting all assets, but critical attention to protecting critical assets. Very important to take note of. Then you should be able to develop and enforce cybersecurity policies, like we already talked about policies, password policies, access control policies, acceptable use policies. It's important to take note. Please remind me, I think I have a sample of acceptable use policy. for an organization. I can share that with you. I'll share that with you. Please take note. I think that's about 3 things or 4 things I say I'm going to do. All these things are very important towards your project work that we'll be announcing next week. That's very important. Yeah. So I think I will want to stop here. I want to stop here. And before I stop, I think one of the things that is critical to take note of when implementing cybersecurity in an organization is to also build a security-aware organization. Build a security-aware organization, that is regular training. Encourage the organization to have regular training. Promote a security culture within the organization. That's very important and critical. Okay, I would want us to ask questions. I'm going to stop here in case anybody, if we have questions or areas to clarify. Okay, questions? Questions, you have questions or you want, if there are areas to clarify. If there are areas to clarify. It's a whole long process. That's why I said when it comes to implementing cybersecurity in an organization, it's a whole long process. However, what you do is a function of the complexity of operations in the organization. So that's why you need to do an overview first and determine what level of cybersecurity procedures, culture you want to implement within an organization. Okay. Oh, any question? So please, I want you to help me. If you are in this class, please just those things that I made mention of, you can send it to me either privately or even send it on the group. So as I see it, I'm going to remember. I think some of them I can send right off. Okay. Or anybody wants to add up anything? This is going to be our last major class. The subsequent classes, we are going to be looking at projects. That is next week, Thursday, and the upper one, we're going to be looking at projects. We're going to be looking at projects. And we'll pass across some information before then. Okay. I would say in the absence of any other thing, I want to thank you for being a part of this and for coming through since we started. Remember, like I have always said, your learning goes beyond this boot camp. What is important is what you do after now. And we want to encourage you, please put in your best and let's keep interacting. Thank you very much for also investing in your education. And I mean your education, in your learning, in your profession. Thank you for doing that. We appreciate. I think we'll call it a day. If there's no any other question, do take care of yourself and have a great evening. If we can, before Thursday, we would put up information about your projects. But if we don't, we'll be discussing it on Thursday by 8 p.m. Thank you very much and have a good evening. Bye-bye. Okay, sorry, Agbola, I'm seeing your hand up. You want to ask a question? Hello, Agbola. Okay, go ahead, please. Ask your question. You can type it here. If sorry, I did not even see that coming. You can type it if you can't stop.
Are you hearing me? Hello, are you hearing me?
Oh, sorry, I could not hear you. Please, you can ask your question again, Agbola.
Hello, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you for the class. My question is this, sir. You talked about access control, and acceptable use policy.
Policy, yeah.
Now, under we talk about the use of fireworks and other things in order to restrict access to
Access, yes.
our network. They are form of security policies. But
Yeah.
there are, times some sites they don't want they will restrict some people from particular place
Yeah.
through their, like what you made mention, that through their
Yes.
IP address. Maybe
Exactly.
they will try to restrict them, not allow them to register on that particular website.
Page.
But at times,
Oh.
some people use VPN
VPN. Yeah.
in order to bypass,
Bypass. Yeah.
uh, yeah, in order to bypass and be able to do that. What can you say to that?
Okay. It's a two-way thing. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, it's a two-way thing. Now, people using VPN to bypass a network restriction, maybe how do I put it now? Maybe like for instance, that was set up by a firewall to be able to access a particular online resources. Do it for different purposes. Some with malicious intent, some without malicious intent. I can remember I can remember this very well when at a time some years back when we're trying to do some online jobs and we needed to open a what's it called PayPal. We needed to change our location so that it's not really Nigerian PayPal because we were not accepting payment from Nigerian PayPal. And I know some of us will have
Yes.
found ourselves in a position where we needed to uh, bypass some restriction placed on our own IP address because of our location to access resources. That's why I said there are two ways to it. You could be doing it and you don't have any malicious intent. That's one aspect. You want to legally access resources. Then another
Yeah.
person could be doing it with a malicious intent. Now, if you are doing it without a malicious intent, the purpose is probably you need to access that resources. Okay, let me backtrack a little. The question we may also need to also ask is what could be the reason behind that organization restricting access from your location? What could be the reason? Now, let me give an example of reasons why they restrict access from location. Sometimes it is because of legal issues. Now, I want to paint a picture of some things that happen in that particular direction. Legal issues in the term that the country where they are operating would say something like they don't want this information or they don't want these resources to be available for people from this particular country, but only from this country. Now, they will put that restriction because of the policy of the organization. So, if you bypass that restriction, it is not anything wrong with you. It is just for them to be able to tell the what do they call it? The oversight agencies, the agencies that implement some of these procedures to let them know that, oh, we place a restriction, oh, and from our restriction, nobody in Nigeria should access these resources. But from our report, we saw that people from Nigeria access resources. How did that happen? Then they can say we implemented our own firewalls policies to make sure nobody access, but they still access. It's just a way for the organization to tell the regulatory agency that we are not at fault. We did what you asked us to do, but they still accessed it. That's one school of thought, or that's another mindset in that direction. Remember, that's one of the reasons I said that as long as it is not for malicious intent.
Malaysia.
Organizations do it because of policies, because of regulations, and once they have done it, either you access it or you don't access it, it's not their business any longer. Their business is to put in the technology in place to make sure you don't access it. But if you now access it, they know that they have done what the regulatory agency requires them to do. That's one. Then number two, sometimes it is also done to protect, there's an aspect of GDPR that has to do with the data of, okay, let me give an instance. Some of these sites would require you to kind of register. And those organizations are bound by law not to collect or store data of anybody that is not within the geographic regions where they operate. They are bound by law, they are bound by regulations through GDPR. So if you decide to register, it is not their fault. And there is nothing wrong with that from them. They have just done what they need to do. And that's why one of the reasons I said that the only place where there's going to be a challenge is if you are doing that for a malicious intent. I think if it's not for malicious intent, you don't have any problem with that. I don't know. Let me give this instance too. I don't know if growing up, you came across books that they would say not for sale in a particular country, not for sale in, I don't know if you came across it. It's just something similar like that too. But outside those countries, that book could be for sale. I don't know if you got that.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So it could be government restriction. It could be that they don't want a particular person from a particular region to be able to put in their data and the rest because of the data policy stuff. So that's why that restriction is there. So if you bypass it, just make sure that it is not with any malicious intent. It's not with any malicious intent. So I would say it's not really illegal. It's not illegal, but even though it's not in the service term of use for the organization, like, okay, anybody from this location should not be able to register on this website. So you can't even access the website. They will block you off. But so now, if you, me, I want to register, I need that information. You bypass the VPN, you've not done anything bad. Or you bypass using VPN, you've not done anything bad.
Yes.
Or let me put this further. One way that may now be an issue. One way it might actually be an issue is if your organization placed a restriction that once you are using our device, do not access this. And you try to access it, it blocks you off. Then you now go to use VPN. You could actually be sacked. You could be sacked. You could face this disciplinary measure because they don't want their device to access a particular resources and they block it. But you now decide to use a VPN to be able to access it. That one is punishable by the organization. I needed to bring that perspective too. Okay, are we good?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other person trying to talk that I did not hear before? Yeah. Okay. It's okay. Thank you very much. We will be calling this a day. We'll meet on Thursday next week to discuss your projects. However, on the group page, we'll start the discussion ahead so that you can be ready. Thank you very much and have a good evening. Bye-bye. We'll meet in our group page. Bye-bye.